I'd like to welcome you to today's show, Achievers Avenue podcast show. It is a pleasure to have you back. Today we had a brand new guest. I'm just excited to have this conversation, and I know you guys are too. But before I start off, as always, guys, this is just to remind you to make sure you subscribe to our channel, YouTube channel, comment, comment especially on, topics that you would like to talk about, or anything you would like to know a bit more about, or anything that today's guest has said that you would like to, like for them to come for a part 2, or you have any questions. Please make sure you comment, because we love the engagement. It's what we need basically to know how we're doing. So please engage with us and let us know. Make sure you also follow us on Instagram at Achievers_Avenue_podcast. We are live on Instagram, so please make sure you follow, you like, and all the good stuff. We will constantly be posting once we have new episodes of Achievers Avenue, so make sure you keep an eye on that. Right. Today, we have a guest that I'm very, very, very excited, a very knowledgeable guest, right? When it comes to finance, anyway, I tell you that much. And it's a pleasure to have her on today. We're basically here today to speak about everything careers, but also a twist in terms of finance. So I like, without further ado, to introduce my guest, Peta-Kay. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
How are you today?
I'm doing good.
If I don't ask, I'm not a good host, so
Oh, okay. I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for gracing our show today. I really, really appreciate that, taking the time out. I know we've got work and other things going on, so I really appreciate you coming to the show. I think my first question, obviously, you don't want to waste time, want to get straight into it, is so that our audience can get to know you, what you kind of stand for, who you are. The first question would be, what 3 words will best describe you?
Okay, I would say it's always difficult to summarize myself in 3 words. But one thing I'd say is that I'm very versatile. That's one of the things with me. I've come to realize over time that I don't have to put myself in a box, because I think there's so many aspects to me, so many things I'm interested in, that for a long time I've always kind of boxed myself in, and I found it kind of difficult. So I'll say I'm versatile, because I'm pretty versatile. I'd also say I am driven. If there's something that I want, I'm gonna make that thing happen.
Yes, girl.
I'm not gonna give up. And I'd probably say also that I am. I said what? I hate using the word resilient, because I feel like a lot of the times it's kind of linked to like you've gone through hard stuff.
That's true.
But if I'm just honest with myself, I'm resilient. That's another way to describe myself. I think something that I've learned over the years and even experiences that I've gone through is that I've never allowed challenges or disadvantages to stop me. So I'd probably say resilient as well.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes we probably need to start seeing resilience as a good skill, because one thing that I guess that's inevitable is change and challenges like that. We can't change that, right? So being resilient actually is a good thing, just to let you know. So thank you so much, actually. Thank you so much for describing yourself in that sense. We're going to delve just a bit deeper. I want to know who you are, anything you want to tell us about yourself, as it comes to your background, or who you are, or how you identify yourself. So if you can let us know a bit about that, that would be great.
All right. So I am Jamaican. I was born in Jamaica. A lot of the times when people meet me, if they're not familiar with Jamaicans, they'll be surprised that I'm Jamaican, or they'll be like, "Oh, really?" And it's like, yeah, I was actually born in Jamaica. But yeah, I'm Jamaican. Pretty much came to the UK when I was 7, and I've lived here ever since. Hence, I don't really have an accent. As far as who I am, I'd say that I am a very dynamic person, very passionate, very driven. And there's just so many different things I'm passionate about, which is why I said versatile. So it's quite hard sometimes. Even when we talk about my career, you'll kind of see that as well. It's like once I am passionate about something, or there's something that's really important to me, I'm the kind of person that I can't just do nothing about it. Like, I have to do something. So that's also how I describe myself. I'm a wife. I've been married for 5 years, 6 years next month. So I'm a friend, I'm a daughter, I'm a businesswoman, I'm also an employee, I'm a manager as well. So there's a lot of scopes to me.
You've got a lot of cards, yeah.
There's a lot of cards, and I've learned to accept that that's okay.
That's okay.
The normal life is not for me, and I've just come to accept that this is just who I am, and I'm embracing it. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me.
I love that. I absolutely love that. You mentioned actually careers, so that's where I'm going to take this. Of course, Achievers Avenue podcast is pretty much centering on careers, but we want to add everything else to it as well, right? So I'd love to kind of start off, or to let me know how you started off in your career.
Yeah.
You know, your first couple of years, or what industries, or what you did effectively. And you can even start from uni if you like, where you kind of, or your schooling and how you got into the industry that you got into, and what led to kind of pretty much up to today, actually.
Well, funnily enough, in secondary, I was always that person that I would have a plan, or I'd be like researching. Like I remember, I think in year 9, so at that age, you're like 14, 15, I was already researching salary bands, like, because at the time, yeah, that was me. Like, we'll get to it. I feel like a lot of the things I was passionate about is, even though I'm not doing some of those things now, it's very full circle to what I am doing. So in secondary school, I was very heavily interested in forensic science. I think that was because of CSI. I used to watch CSI a lot. So I was really interested in forensic science. I did trouble science for my GCSEs because, again, that was kind of leading me to that pathway. Yeah. But then as I kind of got a bit older, and then I started to see what the salaries were for forensic science, I was like, yeah, I don't think I want to do that anymore. So that kind of changed. And then after that, I was pretty much honed in on, I want to be a clinical psychologist. And that's what I wanted to do for a long time. So even when I was in college, that was the thing I wanted to do. However, obviously, I'm not doing that now. I think it was a mixture of changing my mind about what I wanted to do, and also there was other circumstances where I wasn't able to start uni on time. So by the time I could start uni, it was more so like, I was like, I don't want to do clinical psychology anymore. And then at that point, I wanted to study business management, which I did. But because I was classified as a international student, I had to, one, obviously the fees are different, it was a lot more expensive, and I also had to pay for myself because I wasn't eligible for any loans. So at this point, I'd already got my grades, and my grades were fine, but then I wasn't able to start uni, I think, until I was like 19. So at that stage, obviously I decided to just do a part-time course because at the same time I was working. So in my mind was like, I've always had a passion for business, and at that time I'd also started a organic natural hair care product business. So I'd started that during like my gap year because I couldn't go to uni. So I was like, again, I need to do something with this time. So I started that business, and that kind of led me into, okay, let me do business management uni, because then I'm going to get like the actual academic side of it. But then I started the course, and again, bear in mind, I'm paying for it myself with some support from my mum as well. And it was just like, oh, is this what I'm paying for? It just didn't feel worth it.
Really?
It wasn't worth it.
Why do you say that? Like, what is it exactly?
Based on my expectations of what I would learn, and what I was actually learning, it was like, this just doesn't feel worth the sacrifice and the money I'm paying for. So I think probably about 7 or 8 months in, I was just like, yeah, I'm packing it in. Right. Yeah, and it was funny because I've always been an academic person. I always saw myself like having a degree. But it was just like, maybe if my circumstances were different and I could have just gone and got student loan like everyone else, I would have continued. But I think when you're feeling it, that it's your own money and you're actually like having to work to pay for this thing, it just didn't feel worth it. So, and looking back on it now, I don't regret it. It's not stopped being one bit, but I'd say, yeah, it just wasn't worth it for me.
Okay, so after making that decision, I think, which was a smart decision because you didn't want to continue and then, quote unquote, waste, your
and also
resources.
It would have been 4 years as well. Because it was part time.
Oh, right. That's 4 years you can't get back effectively.
Yeah, and money that
you're not getting back either. Exactly. Wow. So after that, how did you end up in like the dentistry side of things?
So at that point, well, if you go back a little bit, so in secondary school, when you do like your work experience, I'd done that in a dental practice because my mom was a dental nurse. So I always knew like retail wasn't for me. People are too rude, that's the thing. And like picking up the clothes, I just knew not for me. So from that, I kind of got a bit of work experience, and I had like a little summer job at the place she worked. So when I was working to pay for university, I had a dental receptionist role that I was doing. So that's pretty much how I fell into it. It wasn't so much like this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
The opportunity was there and I started working from there. So at that point, I think, I started from college. So I was working part-time from, I was 17, 18, and was always kind of in dental reception.
You had ample experience by the time you were actually, after the uni bit. And how long did you do that for?
So I was doing dental reception, let's say from 17 to about, till about 21, early 21. Because at that stage, I'd worked at a few places. Like I started temping in one place, and because I was doing so well, they offered me a permanent position. So I was working there for a while, and then after a few years doing reception and admin, it was like, yeah, I want to progress. Because again, this is the progression in me. I'm like, okay, what's the next step in this industry? Because again, at that stage, because I just wanted to do business, it was like, okay, so how am I going to make this work? So I wanted to get into the management side of things because, again, that's going to be more challenging. There's other skills I'll be able to develop. So at that stage, I was like, yeah, I want to get into the dental practice management side of things. So again, when you don't have experience in something, it's always going to be hard to get your first role into that. So I was looking for roles. I remember there's one interview in particular I remember because I got through to the second stage. And the owner was like, we really like you, but, unfortunately went with someone with more experience. And it's like, oh. But then at the same time, I was like, okay, do you know what? At least I got through to the second stage. Yeah, so that in itself was encouraging. So for probably about a year, so from 20 to 21, I was looking, applying. And then finally, I was able to get like a management position, which was a learning curve as well. More so because I think also coming into the world of work, I was quite naive.
Yeah.
Ooh. As far as like, again, when you're younger, you feel like when you think of adults, you think, oh, everyone's so mature. But then you're working with people that's like double your age, and you see sometimes the way people behave in the workplace, and like this person not talking to that one, and they're making it very obvious. And it's like, and again, because I was so young, I was always the youngest person everywhere I worked. So it was just like, oh my gosh, is this what real adults are like?
Yeah.
Like, this is not what I was expecting.
Exactly.
So even with going into that first management role, the naivety was there. So I had the interview now. And agreed. So initially they had like a starting salary, and they're like, after I think it was 6 months or 3 months, whatever the probation was, we'll increase your salary. So I'm like, okay, great. So again, I'm naive. Increase your salary. I'm thinking it's gonna be like significant. Yeah. We've got through the probation period. I've done really well. We have the probation meeting. They're like, you've done such a great job. Because at that stage, I really did do a great job. The things that I didn't know as far as like the CQC, the Care Quality Commission, I learned all the things I needed to know. I was doing well with my team. There was like lots of like out-of-date policies. I updated everything. So like I did a great job because I was really trying to prove myself. And then they're like, we're going to increase your salary. It was like an hourly rate job. 50p. Oh, no, or was it 10p? I think it was 10p. And like when they said that, I was just like so shocked. Because I'm thinking an extra 10p an hour.
Pence an hour.
Yeah. And I was just like, wow. I was just in such shock. And they were like, what do you think? And I was like, I don't know. Like, it's not what I was expecting. Yeah. So for me at that stage, it was like, I should have been specific. I should have asked the questions like, what will it increase to? Because again, it increased, but 10p, an extra 10p an hour, 80p a day. What's that going to do for me? Yeah. So that for me was a lesson learned. And at that stage, I thought, I need to leave this place because it doesn't make sense. Even when I was looking at the market and what other places were paying, it was a lot lower and it was a lot of work. And I was just like, So I guess that's one good thing because I learned early that sometimes you just need to job hop a little bit.
So what would be, with the exception of job hopping, which you've said, what would be like a key learning lesson from that? Because would it be that you didn't ask? Because I think that was the interesting part.
Firstly, there's a few. So let's go back. So firstly, you've got to be very clear with the questions you ask when you are at interview stage. I think sometimes because, especially when you're looking for a new job, and if you are desperate, you just kind of want to get a new job, sometimes you don't ask those questions. So be very clear, even if it's writing them down beforehand. If my salary is going to increase, how much will it increase by? Like, be very specific with your questions, because sometimes people aren't forthcoming, and unfortunately not all employers are honest and they want what's best for you. They want what's best for their business. So definitely asking the right questions and not being afraid to ask those questions too. Like not shying away. Oh, I'll wait till I get the job. Don't do that. Because now you're locked in and it may potentially not be something that aligns with what you want.
Yeah.
So I definitely say don't be afraid to ask the questions. It's a two-way relationship. It's a two-way street. So yeah, firstly ask the questions and also get everything in writing. So if they promise you after your successful probation, we'll increase your salary by 5K, 2K, whatever it is, or there's a promotion, please confirm that in an email. No, honestly, because sometimes you have these conversations or even internally within the company, things change, that person moves on. Yeah. And then it's like, oh, but I spoke to so-and-so.
You have no
They're not here anymore. Or the
evidence.
person gets amnesia and they forget. And it's true. And then you're locked in and then it's a bit more difficult. So anything that's promised, even if it's they'll pay for your travel, please confirm that in writing. Yes.
You're right. You're so right. Everything you're saying
I learned very quick and early.
Those are valuable lessons though, right?
Yeah, it was.
Very valuable. And I think just to add a little bit, I think the earlier you learn these lessons, sometimes the better. I think sometimes you do get a shock though, because of
definitely. Thankfully, I learned that at 21.
Yes,
but I'm glad I learned it at that stage and not now.
Yes, exactly. Sorry, so I did cut you off because you were saying that you found a new job after that.
Yeah. So before getting to the stage of looking for a new job, because again, I wanted to be somewhere for a long time and learn and grow, but I realized that environment, that it just wasn't going to happen, you know. So once I realized that, I was like, okay, let me get looking. So I updated my CV, got a new job, and that I'd say was definitely a lot better. Not just in the money, but even in the things I was able to learn. And for a couple of years, that's what I was doing. But I think there were certain aspects of the practice management. So essentially a dental practice manager is basically like a business manager for that site. Okay. So you're overseeing the customer care, you're overseeing complaints, you're overseeing the team, you're overseeing the financial. So it's a lot of different things. There's a lot of moving parts, and also depending on the company you're working with, if it's like a small family business or if it's like a big corporate, you know, your experience is going to be different and what's expected is going to be different. Okay. So after a couple of years, there was aspects, like I said, I enjoyed. But fast forward to 2019, I'd gotten to a stage, actually just before I got married, where I was working was quite far from where I was going to be living. So I was like, it's not really working. I'm going to need to find somewhere sooner. So closer, not sooner. And so once I got a new job the following year, which was a lot easier to get to, for me, in my head, it was like, I'm giving dentistry one more try. Okay. I'm going to see what this place is going to be like. Because there were certain patterns I found in the role that I thought, I don't know if I can be doing this for 5-10 years. Because I'm the kind of person that if there's a problem, I'm like, okay, let's find a solution. But if there's no way to find a solution, then I need to be the solution and leave. Right. So that's the way that I approach things in the workplace. I'm not the kind of person that there's an issue, I'm just going to leave. I'll try to solve it. I'll voice what's happening. If nothing changes, then I'm just going to be like, okay, I need to move on. And that's kind of where I approached it with that last role. And it was like, okay, I'm just going to give it one more try, see what it's like. And yeah. And
if it's not making sense,
then I will have to figure out a career change. Yeah. And that's what happened. I had to figure out a career change. Wow. So starting that role on the outside, like everything seemed like, oh, perfect, I'm going to love it. But then it just kind of reminded me of all the things that I kind of wanted not to have in my career, if that makes sense. I think one of the things I didn't really have the language of at the time was work-life balance. Okay. That was non-existent. I found that I was like coming in early, leaving late. And because I'm so conscientious with my work, there were certain things I wasn't able to do because I was overstretched with other things. So it was just like, I wasn't really delivering the work I wanted to, and the support wasn't there. Yeah. And it was just like, this isn't worth it. Like, I'd constantly ask myself questions like, can I do this till I'm 70 or 68? Like, I cannot do this, you know? So even in that job, that's when I really got quite burnt out. And I didn't even realize it at the time. I'd get home from work and I'd be absolutely exhausted. I'd wake up in the morning and the first thing I'm doing is checking my phone to see if anyone's called in sick. Because again, if people were sick, they'd have to call me and let me know. Yeah. And then I'd have to book like an agency. So there was also that anxiety of like, I hope nobody's sick. And there was a time that there was a lot of sickness. Wow. So it's like, I'm waking up and it's like, preparing myself. Like every day I'm making that prayer, like, oh God, give me strength. The amount of times every day I'm like, God, yeah, it was a lot. Wow. So it got to a stage where I was just like, yeah, this is not healthy. Yeah, I need a career change. But again, at that time, I didn't know what that career change was going to look like. So those things I was exploring, like project management, What else do I want to do? I thought maybe something in HR would be suited to me. Again, I'm applying, I'm looking for things, but again, because you don't have that direct experience, it's a little bit more difficult to get into. So nothing was really happening. And then it got to March 2020. Just before the lockdown, I got to a stage, I can't remember what happened, but I remember calling my husband, like he knew I was unhappy already. And I was like, how would you feel if I handed in my notice today? I don't remember what happened that day, but it just got too much. And I was just like, I can't do this. I need to get out of this place. So he was like, yeah, no, it's fine. So I was like, okay, cool. So I handed in my notice. And then I think it was like a week later that we went into the lockdown.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was just like, ooh, okay. Because again, in my head, it's like, it's fine. I'll leave this job. At least I'll have some time to think, and then I can find a new job.
Yeah.
But of course, this is like a whole new experience. Like, lockdown, what's that?
No one, honestly
speaking, and at that time, of course, nobody's going to be hiring anyone.
No.
So it was like, oh, okay. So my like temporary little career break, breathing space to find a new job, completely shifted and changed. But at the same time, when I look back on that, I'm really happy that it happened that way, because if I look back at my plans, let's say 5 years ago, what I'm doing now wasn't in my direct plans. But at the same time, I'm glad that everything happened the way it did. So having that time away from that job and actually having time to think and really think about, okay, what do I want to do? What are my skills? What am I passionate about? What do I actually enjoy doing? What are the aspects of the job I was doing that I enjoyed? What were the things that I didn't like?
Yeah.
So like really thinking about things analytically and just taking that time to really reflect about it. And one of the things that kind of came to mind was like finance coaching. Firstly, I'd never really heard about it, never thought about it. I was like, okay, cool. For me, if an idea or something comes to my mind, I research it. So that came to mind. And I was like, oh, okay, that actually, like, I have all the skills to do that. I have the people skills. I've been coaching people at work as part of my team. Like, my previous role, I was managing like 20 plus people. Would not recommend. It's a lot of work. A lot of personalities. And I think, yeah, that doesn't make sense to line manage that many people. But, so looking at the skills that I had, I was like, okay, cool, let's explore this. And again, it wasn't something that I thought of doing like a full-time thing. It was just like, let me explore this. I have this time. Let me do something with it. And so I started like putting a package together of like what I would want to deliver. And it was also something I was thinking about in my own personal finances. Because prior to that, 2 years ago, I think when I got married, that's when I really realized the reality and gravity of personal finances and actually having responsibility. Because again, when I lived at home, yes, I would contribute towards certain things, but most of my salary I got to keep. And if I missed, my contribution, my mom was going to be like chasing me down for it.
Or telling you that you have to pack your bags.
Exactly.
And leave,
However, once I actually realized, oh my gosh, like if you're not intentional with your money, it can all be gone in a week. Because I'd find those times it's like, at the time, both our salaries were like, we were good. But then I'll be realizing, where's the money gone? I don't understand. We're not like lavish spenders. However, I think sometimes we don't realize what we're spending. Sometimes it's those little things, maybe you're having loads of takeaways, ordering things, or you have certain habits that add up. So that was one of the realizations where I realized, oh, wow, like money goes quick.
Yeah.
And if you're only getting paid once a month, you're having more opportunities to spend than you are to make money.
You are, absolutely.
And so I think it was like end of 2018 to 2019, it was like, yeah, need to get our finances together, because in theory, it should be here, but it's not there. We weren't in debt or anything like that, but it's just like substantially seeing the results. I wasn't seeing it. So even at that stage, I was like, okay, I'm a spreadsheet girl. So I was like, let me create like a budget spreadsheet, like something that I can actually like track our spending with. And again, at the time when I created that, I was just thinking about myself. But again, now it's something today that some of my clients use as well. Amazing. So it's like, again, it's that full circle thing coming together. And so I'd already started working on my own personal finances. And at work, I worked with finances. I managed big budgets. So it's kind of incorporating the same skills, but using it in your own life, which is sometimes harder to do. Yeah. So when I did decide, okay, I'm going to start the finance coaching, this was now, I'd probably say it was around maybe April or May that I had the idea. Let's say April, because it was like mid-June that I launched it. And again, when I did, it was like, finance coaching, I'm sure people need it, but are they going to pay for it? There's a lot of things people need, but they're not willing to pay for.
Yeah, that's true.
And sometimes it can be one of those things. So I was like, okay. So I kind of recorded. And at the time, I didn't really post on social media like that. It was just like for my friends and family. So I recorded a video like talking about my career journey, what I was going to be doing and why. Recorded it, and like think it got like 1,000 plus views, and at the time that was a lot. This is someone not really posting, so I was like, oh wow,
this is one of your first initial.
This was like my first initial video. It's still there if I go back. It'll probably make me cringe, but I don't want to say it. But yeah, so I posted that, just like really just saying, you know, these are my intentions, what I want to do, blah blah blah. And like from that, like people were sharing the video, reaching out to me like, oh my gosh, I need this service. So I was like, okay, all right, so I think we have something there.
Amazing.
And I remember from my first coaching client I had, shout out to her, she watches this, when I had that session with her, it was like, yeah, this is what I need to be doing. It was so natural to me. It wasn't something I had to be like over stress about. Like, it was natural to my skills. A lot of the things that in my head is like, oh, this is common sense, everyone knows that. It wasn't. And I just really enjoyed it. It was so rewarding for me to see that the knowledge that I was sharing with her was, one, really helpful. Yeah. And also now looking back on it and seeing the changes that she's made since then, it's just like
how you've positively contributed to. Do you know what's interesting about what you said is that from what I understand, your skills that you learned in corporate now have really helped you
100%
in your own your business effectively. And I think I remembered when you said you coached about 20 people with 20 different personalities. At the time probably feels like a pain, because I understand 20 personalities is not a joke, especially if you have between 9 to 5 to figure out what you have your own work, and then you're gonna have to coach them. But my goodness, how much of a better financial coach would that make you now that you can deal with people with different situations, different personalities, different learning styles? Like, that just makes you like so well rounded. So I think that it's almost like it set you up for...
Definitely. And that's why I say that a lot of the interest that I had, like, even for example, I'm not a psychologist. However, speaking to people and helping them to understand why they spend the way they do, and getting them to think a bit more about their actions and their decisions, it all kind of links, because a lot of the work that I talk about is to do with your mindset. It's also your habits, and it's helping people not only to see, oh, I'm bad with money. It's not that you're bad with money. It's more so, what are the things that have influenced how you manage your money? How do you see it? And I think also a lot of the things comes back to how you see yourself. A lot of people that are frivolous with their money, sometimes it's because they just feel like they're never going to be good financially, or there's a sense of trying to make up for what they didn't have as a child.
Right.
Or sometimes maybe they just have a personality that's a bit more impulsive. So it's kind of helping people to firstly see, like, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? For some people, they're great at making money. They can start a business today or find a new job that's going to pay them a lot of money. But for some people, they're just not good at keeping money. And then you have others that they struggle with managing their money. So also for me, one of the things I teach people is kind of helping them to understand which aspects is their strengths and which is their weakness. So when it comes to money management, I break it down into 3 ways. So it's making money, managing money, and multiplying your money. Okay. So thinking about what are the things that you're naturally doing. If you've got a job, you're making money. So that's step 1. But then maybe your issue is not necessarily how much you're making, but it's managing that money. Or maybe you're pretty good at managing, maybe you're good at budgeting and you're not in debt, you're able to save a substantial amount. But perhaps it's then knowing, like, how can I multiply the money? So it's just breaking things down in a way that's easy for people to understand.
Digestible.
Exactly. And even what you said about managing lots of different people, like now you said it's true, and also different personalities, backgrounds, ages. Because I remember one of my first clients that was like, I think maybe 50 plus. It was a little bit intimidating for me, because it's like, wow, you're coming to me? You're so much more older, and kind of once you remove that kind of imposter syndrome, it's like, clearly they're coming to me because they feel confident in what I can do. And obviously I was able to help them. So I think definitely those experiences have 100% helped me to where I am today.
That's amazing, because who would have thought that, being in dentistry then feeds into financial, like, this, like, completely 2 different worlds.
100%.
But see how your skills have, like, literally, you've honed in you had your skills anyway. You're obviously born with your gifts. But then working gives you that experience, and that allows you to kind of use it and build and develop on it, and then you've now used that as, that's what's taking you
Definitely. I think transferable skills is so important. Key. And I think even if you're in a job right now that you don't enjoy it, you don't want to be there, I think the way you look at it is so important. Remind yourself, okay, I don't want to be here, I'm not going to be here forever. That's fine. But what skills can I learn and develop in this job? What can I improve on? If there's opportunities to grow, take those opportunities. Tap into them.
I completely agree. Be intentional. Absolutely.
Definitely. Be intentional with your time there. And again, you might not be there forever. That's fine. but take whatever you can from that experience.
Absolutely.
Whether it's learning to be better of your people skills, whether it's dealing with different kinds of people, working in a team, working by yourself, work on different projects, like just take the best you can from that situation.
That's amazing. Like everything you've said is just bravo advice, right? But speaking more about advice, or what like interesting things do you think people should know about finance? Like the most basic interesting things as a finance coach that you've seen, or that you know through your research or through whatever. What interesting things do you think that people should know?
I'd say one of the interesting things, which is something I identified in my own personal life, but I've also seen it in my client's life, is that a lot of the times we're always saying, I just need to have more money. And more money is not always going to solve all your problems. And if you have bad spending habits, more money will not solve that. In actual fact, it's actually going to exacerbate your spending habits that you have now. So I'd say that there are going to be circumstances where you need more money. So let's say your expenses and your income is very close together. You definitely need to have more money, or you need to cut those expenses, or both. However, if it's a case of you're constantly overspending and it's on things that aren't really essential, I think something I've also come to realize is like working with people who have different incomes. So I've worked with clients that they're more on an average salary, let's say 30K, or even a little bit less. And I've worked with clients where they earn over 100,000. And some of them have very similar problems financially. They still feel like they don't have enough money. And I think seeing that, it's like, wow. So sometimes the issue is not necessarily what you're earning, but how you're spending that money. And it's very easy to think, oh yeah, if I just earn 2,000 more, it's going to solve everything. But again, if you're not already doing what you can to solve those negative habits you have now, when you earn that extra money, you're just going to spend more. And you're going to find yourself in the same position, but with nicer stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what I see happen with people a lot.
Wow. I'm marinated all that in because I'm thinking I'm one of those people that always say that I don't have enough.
I mean, most people, if you speak to anyone on the street right now, do you think you need to earn more money? Everybody's going to say yes, 100%.
That's so true.
And sometimes that is the case. You do need to earn more money. I think on a yearly basis, your salary needs to be increasing past inflation, because otherwise, it's a struggle. However, I think that definitely does not solve all your problems. You've got to also look at the spending habits that you have. If you find that you're constantly overspending on certain things, or you're saying, oh, okay, I'm going to save X amount this month, but, every week you're slowly just taking money out for things that aren't essential, then there's something that you need to work on as far as your habits. But I'd also say another thing that I've realized is that unfortunately, a lot of the times we spend based on what we think we deserve as opposed to what we can afford. So there's a lot of people that they're living a certain lifestyle that really and truly, when we go through the numbers together and they look at it, it's like, you actually can't afford the life you're living right now. And that's the reality. It's so easy for us to live lifestyles we can't afford. You can get a really nice car that you actually can't afford. It's easy to get maybe an apartment or a house, or even get a mortgage for a house that in theory, we're not just talking about the eligibility for the mortgage. Yeah. When you look at the payment and also the fact that if those payments increase by, let's say, extra £500,
which they might do if the interest changes. Yeah.
Again, so it's so easy for us to live lifestyles that we can't truly afford.
Right.
And things like credit cards, buy now, pay later is practically, these days you can get anything on buy now, pay later. Yeah. Like, it just makes it increasingly easier for us to live lifestyles we can't afford.
The question I was going to ask on that.
Okay, go for it.
What do you think has exacerbated that? Do you think it's like social media? Because I think a lot of people think that people want to have a perception on social media, and behind that they are putting themselves in really bad situations. Do you think that, as from your perspective as a finance coach, you think that's what's happening?
Social media definitely plays a part. Okay. However, there are people that struggle with lifestyle inflation that aren't on social media. I think just in its nature as humans, we compare each other. Okay. Like, if you removed it, people have been keeping up with the Joneses from the 50s and 60s. Yeah. So it's just that now with social media, you're able to see what the Joneses are doing. You're able to see that, oh yeah, they've gone to Greece and they're going to the south of France in a couple of months. So it just makes it a bit easier and accessible to see what others are doing. And naturally, sometimes you might compare. You might feel like, oh, I work so hard, I should be able to go on one holiday a year. But maybe looking at your numbers right now, you can't afford one holiday a year abroad. Maybe you can have a little staycation or a few nights in a nice hotel in the UK. But I just think it's just having, understanding your reality. And I think when it comes to money, because there's so many different factors that play into it. It's your emotions, it's your feelings. Sometimes we get emotionally attached to certain things. It can really kind of skew your view of where you are. And it's so easy to deceive yourself and think, oh, but I earn 60K, so I can afford this. But no, you can't. You've really got to look at your actual numbers. And I think sometimes that's the scary part, looking at your reality.
It is. Even looking at your bank balance sometimes can give you a bit of a heart palpitation.
Exactly. Looking at your bank balance, checking your credit score. Like, if you know it's bad, you're like, oh, there's no point checking. There is a point in checking. Because sometimes there's errors that happen. There's mistakes that made. Maybe you have a similar name to someone and there's an error on your report, but again, you're not checking it because you don't want to see it. So I think it's just kind of having an awareness of it.
Yeah.
And trying to put your feelings aside, even though it's hard, to kind of get a reality of your situation.
So many gems from what you just said. Like, that's amazing. I think one thing I'll quickly delve into, and I think that's based off a conversation we were having even before, which is how finance can impact society, or like the world that you live in, or whether it's family, whether it's like relationships. Like, how does that all interlink? Because that's not something that I naturally piece together. But like, tell us a bit more about that, because that was super interesting.
I think generally, based on the conversation we were having, I think one of the things that I said was that finances affects pretty much every aspect of your life. If you think about your family, if you're going through financial difficulties, that's going to have an impact on maybe the things you can do with your family. So maybe you had a habit of every Sunday you all meet up and you go for dinner. If you're strapped financially, that's going to need to change. You might not be able to do that. And also if you go through instances in your family where maybe somebody wants to borrow money or you loan someone money, and again, that can shift the dynamic when there's issues that come up as a result of that. And then also there's in your relationships, finances can play a part. Even in your friendship groups, maybe there's some friends that are in like high paying jobs, others that are maybe in lower paying jobs. And even sometimes if you're not confident within yourself, it's very easy for you to compare yourself or maybe start thinking, oh, but I can't really afford that lifestyle. Or even the classic, you're planning a trip in the group chat. And maybe some friends, they can easily afford that 7-night stay in this 5-star hotel. But maybe your budget does not allow that. So it's like even navigating those differences and really having open conversations. And I think it can be very difficult to be like, I can't afford that, Or even if you're the person that can afford it, but then you have friends that can't. So even being able to approach it from a place of like understanding and not being selfish and actually being sensitive to the fact that not everybody's earning what you're earning.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think also that can affect the dynamic. Or if you think about life events, maybe your friend's getting married or there's a baby shower coming up and then there's like, oh, let's all contribute such and such amount. This can also happen in your family as well, but maybe you can't afford that £100 contribution. Or for you, that's easy, but for others, it's not. So I think there's just so many different ways that finances can play a part, especially when you're not in a good place financially or you're not happy with where you are. Even the fact that there's a lot of people that are in debt, but it's kind of like a hidden part of their life. They don't talk about it.
Secrets.
It can feel quite embarrassing. There's people that you might look at their life and think, oh, she's doing amazing or he's earning a lot. But yeah, they're earning a lot, but they've also got a lot of debt. So it's very difficult. And one thing I would say with social media and just in general is like take people's lives and the things you perceive with a pinch of salt. Because you don't know what people are going through. You don't know what's in their bank balance. You don't know what's on that credit card statement. You don't know how that trip was paid for or that wedding was paid for. And I think you do yourself a disservice when you're there comparing yourself to people that you don't know the ins and outs of their lives. And I think even with that, something I've noticed, I don't know if it's a cultural thing here, but I find that a lot of people are quite negative to people that earn a lot of money. Yeah, it's quite like, oh, but they don't understand, they're not living that. But then it's like, you don't actually know how people earn their money. And not everybody was a handout. Sometimes people have worked hard for their money, and that's fine. And I feel like you shouldn't have to feel that you need to have gone through loads of trauma, and you don't. If you've done well in life, be proud of it, and that's okay. Equally, if that's not your story, you don't have to compare yourself to anyone. It's what you make with your situation that's going to make the difference. But I think that's also another thing as well. And even if you think about your mental health, your finances, if you're going through a lot of stress and anxiety, you've got bills that aren't being paid, or you're struggling to pay them, or you're having to work lots of extra hours to be able to make ends meet, it can impact on your health.
It will. It's not can, it will. It will, and I think it probably will show up in different ways. Some people can just end up like falling sick because of the stress and then if you fall sick, then you're out of work. It's almost like a
vicious cycle.
Cycle. So no, you're completely right. Like, people should definitely concentrate on what they probably can control.
That's it. I think that's always the best place to start. Focus on the things you can control, because it's easy sometimes to look at the things you can't. Like, oh, I'm just not earning enough, or my industry doesn't pay. That's fine. What can you control? Maybe your industry doesn't pay, but what skills can you develop? What opportunities are out there? And I think this is why I say that sometimes the way we manage our money, it links to our confidence as well. Because if you lack confidence in yourself, you may see the problems that you're going through, but you might not necessarily think that, you know what, I have the ability to remove myself from this, or I can do better elsewhere. When you don't, you're going to stay in that job, you hate it, you're going to complain every day, making your tea or your coffee, and you're complaining, oh, I hate this place. You know those people that they're complaining every day, but they've been there 5, 10 years, 15 years.
Even more, absolutely.
And they're still there complaining. You've left and is so-and-so still there? Yep, they're still there. And I think a lot of the times, especially, like I said, when I was very naive when I started working, but even now when I look back at people that I've met similar to that, it's the same thing. They lack confidence in themselves. Because if you hate something so much, well, you'll do nothing to change it. It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. What would be your advice? And I'm glad that that's where you our conversation is navigated. What would be your advice to corporate staff in terms of how they, not just how they handle their finances, but then how they can kind of guarantee that uptick? I know there's no straight formula. I know that there's no way that, you know, we can say it's this and then it applies to everyone and everyone gets a 10K promotion every year. It's not realistic. But then what kind of bits of advice besides the skill set, because I can't disagree with that at all. The more your skills, you know, are, if you're taking qualifications or what have you, that will naturally boost you. But are there any, like, maybe minor things that people miss that in the corporate space that they could help to you know, increase their salary or get them into?
I definitely say, now when I look back at it, and things that I didn't do that I would do or I'm doing now, is like keeping a record of the things that you're doing well. So even if you don't have an appraisal, or you feel like it doesn't go anywhere because it doesn't lead to extra money, keep a record of the work that you're doing, the projects you're doing, and the results that you're gaining from that. Because I think sometimes when it comes to having conversations about money, you're like, oh yeah, I should be earning extra 3K or 10K or whatever it is. But think about it, this is a business. They want to know, how is your skills or what you're doing, how's that going to add more money to them? Or how is it going to improve the service that they have, or the product, or whatever the case may be, depending on your industry. So it's really important for you to actually be able to provide tangible things that you're doing. Everyone feels like they deserve a pay rise. And sometimes, yes, you might do because you're great at your job. But it goes beyond that. And I think sometimes it's having the confidence to have those conversations. Even putting a business case together, why not? A lot of the times, what's the answer? It's not in the budget. So, okay, so is there something that we can do to create a budget? Or even just going out of your way to actually show that this is what I'm able to do. This is the impact I've actually made tangibly. And I think that in itself can make a difference. And even if it doesn't lead to the extra money, because maybe there really is no budget, sometimes that is the case. But just having the confidence to actually sell yourself, I think sometimes that's what we lack in the workplace. We lack the ability to actually, be like, you know, I've done a great job and here it is. You know, actions speak louder than words. So actually being able to show the work that you're doing and the impact that has. And also, if you found you've reached a cap, there is no room to grow in where you are, it's okay to move on. You know, it is like, it doesn't have to be because you hate it, but if you actually genuinely want to progress and you want to grow, and a lot of the times, you know, in order for you to get a significant pay rise, unfortunately, you need to get a new job. And sometimes that's the reality. And that's one thing I would say to employers is that if retention is important to you, you've really got to create room for people to grow.
That's true.
Because if you're not creating that for people that are ambitious and they want to grow, they're not going to stay. You're not going to keep good talent.
Absolutely.
Especially if they know their worth.
Absolutely. I mean, there's that, I guess, that glass ceiling effect in that sense that people will drop like flies. I've actually seen some companies, which is a good thing actually, they obviously have their salary, like what their salary is, but they do a lot of research into like what the industry standard is, and they always make sure that they kind of are the best. And it's funny that some companies really invest in that, and then some companies probably don't.
Definitely. I'd say companies that invest in that, they recognize the value of retention. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of businesses don't, but they don't realize that a lot of the times it's when someone's left, you realize the impact they had.
Right.
Because maybe that person, they knew everything, they created this process, and it's like, oh, but they've gone now.
This is
and
so
then
true.
sometimes the person that comes in, they may be good, but maybe they weren't necessarily the best fit, or they weren't as committed to the company as that new person. So I think sometimes businesses miss the mark in realizing how important retention is. Because yes, everyone's replaceable, but that doesn't mean that next person is going to be better than them.
Ooh.
So
well, there we go to our employers.
Definitely. And also for me, these are things I'm taking for the future.
Yes.
When I have staff in the future, I know the do's and don'ts now.
Yeah.
So
that is great. I really love the advice you give, and I think the only thing I would add is, you see, when you have your document of things that you've done, people like to probably not quantify what they do, and I think that's really important to do. Quantify it in the sense that, okay, you saved, you did this process, or you fixed this, so it saved your company from, for example, having to employ someone to come in and like fix stuff. Because I think even as a consultant, I can see that we sometimes have to go in to places like, whether it's a secondment, to do certain things that the people already there are very qualified to do. It's just that there's maybe like too much going on, or whatever case is going on. But if you're able to save your company money, definitely go about quantifying, because I think that's money. Sometimes, again, in a company, money is a language people can understand. Definitely. Whether it's a cost saving or whether it's like profit or whatever the case is, use quantify. I think that's one thing probably I would advise myself when I was younger, not to just say, oh, I done this and I done this. And it's, if you look back at it, sometimes it's literally just your job spec, but just with a bit of spice added to it. But actually know what was your result of it. What have you added, quantifying things that you now do that have significantly changed something, so yeah, that's I'd probably add that to it. You hit the nail on the head, literally, because everyone does their end of year review process, right? But how many of us are really taking it seriously to that point where we're developing that, as you said, that business case? And I think as an employer, as employee, once you've made that business case and you've done as much as you can, that should tell you everything that you need to know as well about your future there. Right? Because once you have put so much effort into that, if that's not being even recognized, if that makes sense, or acknowledged, and you're still kind of, there's, after that, I think there's just so much, you have to kind of like assess your environment and see, well, is this a place that I can in the future stay? And then if it doesn't work, then just find greener grass. Just make sure you do your research as well, obviously.
Exactly.
Make sure you do your research. But no, that's all really, really fabulous things. I'd like to know more about, of course, your company. As a finance coach, tell us more about what you do, services you provide. I know your Instagram off the top of my head, actually. My Finance PT.
Close, but no.
Oh gosh, your Finance PT. Sorry.
Finance PT.
I was close. You
were so confident as well.
I know.
You were close.
But you're my Finance PT, but how about that?
So you're right, yeah.
So yeah, tell us more about you and what you have going on. If you have anything that's coming up as well, that would be really good for us to know. Or like even like an email distribution that you have that you want people to sign up. Just anything, just let us know.
So as far as like my finance coaching, I take a very bespoke approach to it. So I do have like set sessions. So like one of the first sessions I started off with was my finance 101 session. So in that, I pretty much cover all the essentials that you need to know to manage your finance as well. I think that was actually one of the first sessions I started with. And over time, as I saw different needs, I created other sessions. So like I have a budget builder session, but all my sessions are essentially one-to-one. So again, I have my undivided attention. And I think because personal finance is so personal, sometimes the guidance I might give to one person may be completely different to another.
Very true.
And everything is pretty much centered on what your goals are, what your current situation is, and also what your pain points are. So for some people, it's like they're not able to save, or maybe they are saving, but it's not as much as they'd like to, or they have financial goals they want to achieve, but they just don't know how. So depending on the person I'm working with, some people it's more the strategy side, others is actually helping them to create a budget, others it's helping them to create a financial plan. So I'd say if you're listening and you're like, my finances is all over the place, start with a finance 101 session. That's a session I would definitely plug. I've had loads of people that have started off just having that one session with me, and they took everything they needed to take, applied it, and they were able to see results. You know, whether it was able to clearing down their debts. One of my clients, my first one actually, she bought her first home, and that was really exciting because it was like, she was like, everything you actually spoke about really did help with the process. So it pretty much depends on your journey. But aside from that, I also do workshops as well and events, speaking events, because there's just so many different things when it comes to finances. Like, I could do a whole day event, but there'll still be things that aren't covered.
Absolutely.
And things are constantly changing. So I'm really passionate about speaking about finance in a way that, one, is easy to understand, to relate to, and also to apply, finding what works for you. And I'd say one thing with my coaching is I take a very holistic approach, and I'm also not the person that's going to be like, I'm going to make you 10K. Like, that's not me.
No false promises here.
Yeah, no false promises, and also very realistic. I think for me, and I think sometimes, especially when it comes to social media, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors, and there's a lot of people that prey into people's desires. So it's like, everybody wants to get rich quick overnight. That's not my coaching. If that's what you're looking for, the Pearls and Pearls coaching is not for you. But if you're actually looking for a real way for you to learn how to manage your money better in a way that's going to work for you, then I'm here to help. And also being willing to do the work. Because again, there's people that they'll pay for the session. Like, for example, I have like subscription plans. So they'll sign up for the 12-month plan, but they won't book their sessions, but you're paying every month. It's like paying for the gym but not going. And I'm like, hello, you need to book in your session. It's not just for you to be paying me, but not actually utilizing the services. So I definitely say the Finance 101 session is a good place to start. But aside from that, I also do business coaching as well.
Okay.
So for either people that have a business idea, because a lot of people, the idea's there, they just don't know how to actually execute it.
Cross that bridge over.
Exactly. Yeah. So I help people from the idea to actually executing their business.
Okay.
For others, it's they have a business, but they just kind of manage it like a hobby, and they don't know how to kind of actually have those systems in place.
Yeah.
So again, for others, I work with them on that aspect of things. Wow. So as I said, I'm kind of doing a lot, but I'm passionate about those things. So.
Yeah, no, amazing. Oh, wow. That is fantastic. What else would you, because I think you just mentioned that you're quite passionate about those particular things. Like, do you see yourself expanding in terms of, like, what audience do you think really need to know about finance as well? And the reason why I'm even asking this question, because I'm alluding to the fact that in school, we weren't really taught a lot of this financial things that would have been much useful than pie or these other things that we were taught. So do you think that, I guess, with the younger generation, would you be of the thinking that they also do need?
I'd say it's definitely a cross-generational need.
Wow. Okay.
More so in the sense, like, let's say if you're listening right now and you're in your 40s, one of the things you need to be thinking about at this stage is retirement. Of course, you might feel like, I'm in my 40s, I've still got, like, let's say 20 years. However, 20 years is going to go very quickly. And I think a lot of the times when it comes to managing your money, you're focusing on the day-to-day, which is understandable because life is expensive and hard, and sometimes you're just in survival mode. But actually thinking a bit more about your future and actually like, okay, I want to retire someday. What age do I want to retire? Because one of the biggest problems now that a lot of people that are getting to retirement age is finding is that they can't afford to retire. So people are having to work longer because they can't, not because they want to, they just literally can't afford to retire. Yeah. So I'd say 50 plus, 60 plus, like, it's important. I think it's less of an age thing and more so a background thing. Okay. I think generally a lot of people that might have grown up in a middle class household or in a household where finances was discussed, it's a completely different conversation. Yeah. They already know the importance of having savings, investments. It's nothing new to them. But I'd say a lot of the times people that maybe have grown up in more of a disadvantaged household, or even in a household that they weren't disadvantaged, but they just didn't speak about money. Even sometimes people don't realize that if you have children and you spoil them, but you don't teach them the value of money, sometimes you're setting them up to fail as an adult. Wow. Or you're going to have to fund their lifestyle. Because I think when people don't actually understand the value of money or how things work and realize that, everything has a cost. And it's easy to then get accustomed to a lifestyle that maybe your parents could afford, but you can't afford. And that also is an issue that people have. So I'd say it's probably a cross-generational thing as far as who needs it. But even especially for the younger generation, because now it's like everybody kind of sees this fast lifestyle.
Yes.
Or they think, yeah, I'm going to be an influencer because I'm going to make X amount of money.
Yes.
But not everyone's going to be a successful influencer. And even if, no, it's true. Or even if you become an influencer, if you don't learn how to manage your money, once your niche dries up, you're going to be stuck. You know, and it's going to be difficult to be like, oh, I'll just get 9 to 5. You won't want to get 9 to 5. It's going to be hard. So I think it's just being smart with your money. So whether it's you're in a 9 to 5 or you have a side hustle, the most important thing is what you're doing with that money. It might be £100, but if you know how to invest that £100 wisely, or you put that into something else that's going to make you more money, it might seem small, but over time it's going to add up.
That's some good advice right there. That is good. And I think I like the fact that you took it even way further. Because I get someone like me, for example, thinking we need to probably look at schools and the way in which they teach. But you're looking all the way down to parenting, really, and from the home and how that actually impacts the way that people
if we don't want to get too deep and start thinking about conspiracy theories, I think there's definitely a level of, if you look at society as a whole, especially us, we live in a capitalist society, there is a need for certain people to be poor and or not necessarily poor, but dependent on, let's say, credit. Who gets rich from people that are paying minimum payments every month? The credit card company. Do you know what I mean? So there are certain, unfortunately, companies that benefit from people's lack of knowledge on finances. And so at the same time, I think as an adult, you've got to be responsible for yourself.
Absolutely.
A lot of the things that I learned today, no one taught me. Thankfully, I had a mum that she was frugal with money. There's certain things she taught me, but her knowledge only got me so far. There's other things I had to be intentional about learning. Like, okay, investing, how do I start that? And one thing I'd say from doing my financial advisor course, because I'm also a qualified financial advisor, there's a lot of things that I learned and it made sense. Like, wow, this is why there's such a divide. Because there's some things, people that are paying for this knowledge that are going to know that will be really easy for them to access, whereas your day-to-day person, they won't have the knowledge, they won't have access to this knowledge, should I say. And again, you're at another disadvantage. So I think if you're in a place and you're like, you know, I'm not happy with my finances, you've got to be intentional about changing that. Because it's easy to look at your disadvantages, oh, you know, I'm just not earning enough. But again, it goes back to what I said before, you've got to be resilient. If you really want to change your situation, you've got to do something about it. And that's hard because sometimes no one's coming to save you. Sometimes it's not the government. The government's not coming to save you. Your local MP ain't coming to save you. It's true. Unfortunately, sometimes if you want something bad enough, you got to do something about it. Even if it's just tapping into people in your network. Maybe you have a friend or someone in your family that's good with money. Have those conversations. You know, instead of being envious, like, oh, they don't understand. Speak to them, have the conversation. You know, how did you get to the position you're in? Like, there's so much value in expanding your network and actually being teachable. I think sometimes, depending on, you know, your age or where you're at in life, sometimes we get to a stage where we feel like, I don't want to ask. No, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to admit you don't know something. Or maybe you're in a conversation and people are talking about a term that you don't even understand. Google it. Or, you know, or ask those questions. Or why do you do things that way? So, like, be keen to learn.
Be curious.
Be curious, definitely.
That's amazing. I think the you were mentioning just off the point you made, another word that came to mind was discipline. Do you think that's also something that you
100%.
Do you think that's a core pillar that
it's
you need?
It's a core pillar. And if we're honest with it, most of us, nobody is working on being disciplined. Okay? We're not. And exactly. there is definitely a level of discipline that's required. Irrespective of what you earn, you could be earning millions. If you lack discipline or you're spending more than you earn, you're gonna find yourself in debt. You know, so I think discipline is definitely important. And I think also having being willing to have deferred gratification. Because I think sometimes because we're so used to the fast pace of everything, we want things the next day. We want everything we want in 1 year. It's okay. Like, it's okay to go at your own pace. It's okay to not achieve everything you want in 1 year or 2 years or be at the same place that someone else is. But I think sometimes when we try to rush things before we're truly ready or can afford it, we find ourselves in financial hardships. Ooh. It's even like, let's say, getting married. There's so many people that they get married, but they get married in loads of debt, paying for this beautiful wedding that maybe you're there like even envying, but they're still paying for that wedding 3-4 years later. You know, and sometimes the relationship doesn't even work out. And so I think it's really important. It seems so basic and so common sense, But if you can actually have the ability to live within your means, even if that's hard, even if you feel like you're missing out on certain things, it's okay. If you can live within your means for a short period of time, or maybe it might even feel extended if you're in a lot of debt, that sacrifice is going to be well worth it once you've actually gotten yourself in a better position, as opposed to you living above your means. You're living it well, you're going on the nice trips, the nice holidays, or whatever it is, whatever your vice is, because for some people it's not holiday.
Yeah.
Some people it's food, or it's clothes, or it's even people pleasing. Sometimes it's that. Yeah, sometimes people, they just don't know how to say no. And so they end up spending money on things that might not necessarily be important to them, but they want to be with what everyone's doing.
Yeah.
So I think if you're able to make those sacrifices temporarily, it will pay off in the end.
There's so many things you've touched on, and it's just I know everyone in the audience is like, how to explain it, they're identifying themselves in some of the characters that you've, not characters, but some of the things that you've mentioned that we sometimes just completely overlook. That's amazing. Thank you so much for the wonderful advice. Is there anything, I think probably coming up to our hour, but is there anything that you want to probably just let the world know as a financial coach, or if not, then all your details, basically how they can get in contact with you? Of course, we will link her Instagram and website and everything in our bio, of course, so you have no excuse not to reach out to you. But yeah, is there any last kind of words that you would like to give out to our audience in the world, that you think you just want to leave them with, that they should just ponder on?
Okay, I think one thing I would leave you with is think about, what do you actually want for your finances, and not just your finances, but your life in general, because generally the life that you want, there's a certain cost to it. So maybe you want to have a certain amount of children, there's a certain cost you need to afford those kids, and so on. So I'd say think about, what is your ultimate vision for your finances? What is your ultimate vision for your life? And if you've never really thought about that, that's the place to start. What is it? What am I actually working towards? What am I waking up every day to go to this job for? And thinking about the bigger picture. Because I think sometimes, because we're so used to the hustle and bustle, we're just thinking about the here and now.
So right.
And until you're truly clear on your vision and what you're working towards, it's going to be very difficult for you to make those sacrifices that I spoke about. When it's very loose, like, oh, I'd like to be financially stable, I want to be financially free, but you're not really clear on what that means to you, it's going to be difficult to actually stick to those plans that you're making, or those goals that you set for the year. So think about that. Write it down, scribble, draw, whatever it is that you want to do, but that's a place to actually start. And then you can start thinking about, how can I make this a reality? And again, if you don't know how, then I'll be willing to pay for the services, okay? For someone to help you get there. But I'd say that's a good thing. Yeah. Again, it's an investment.
Yeah.
It's an investment. So yeah, that's one thing I would say. Start thinking about, what is your ultimate vision for your finances.
That's so amazing. I'm so happy you came here today. I think I'm gonna take the last question for myself, guys. I know it's in front of everyone, but I have this dream one day become a millionaire. I don't know how I'm gonna get there, but I keep telling myself that. Where do people even start when it comes to like wanting to dream big? Is it more so like a mindset thing? Should you just really focus on why you want to be so successful and what you want to use that money for? Or are there like practical things you can start off with to say, I don't know, do this and this, save £1 a day and you'll get there eventually? Or
I definitely say it's a combination of both.
Okay.
It's the combination of the mindset of like, this is what I want, but also thinking about, why do I want that?
Yeah.
Or what's that going to look like to me? And even saying you want to be a millionaire, is that asset rich millionaire? Is that liquid millionaire? You want to have that in cash, or is it just in assets that you own? But I think definitely thinking more so about like, why do I want that? Is it because I feel like that's the pinnacle of my success? Is it because, that's just the number that sounds good and that's what I want? But actually really thinking about it, and also then get into the strategy side of it. Okay, this is what you want, but what are some of the vehicles that might get you there? Is it going to be getting into property investment? Is it going to be starting a business of your own that is going to be able to get you to that level? And sometimes it's a combination of lots of different things. So I think being able to get to that stage, is the mindset is definitely important.
Yeah.
But it's also having the willingness to put the sacrifice in.
Mindset versus the strategy.
It's not just to be there, every day I'm going to be rich, I'm going to be... You got to put the work in too.
I've been saying that for a long time, and
you've got to put the work in as well.
You're so right. I love the fact... See, that's my That's my own, like, little financial advice that I'm going to take away today.
Yeah.
And literally work on it, because indeed you can't. It's all good saying, but unless you're actually strategically putting down goals and objectives to get there, you're going to find it hard. I'm not going to say you're not going to get there, but you'll find it extremely hard to get to that place. I think with finance, you always have to break it down, in a sense, because it's not, for example, most people that probably would be watching have a corporate job, right? And how many people in the corporate space have like £1 million salary, right?
Very rare, unless you're the director of directors.
Effectively, exactly. So for me, if I carry on in my trajectory, even though, I'd be well paid, it's gonna take time and it's gonna be hard for me to get there.
But also going back to, one, it's depending on what you're earning and also what you're doing with that money. Yeah. There are people that I've worked with over the years that they're in a corporate job, they've never had a business, they got properties. Because the way they've saved and invested their money, they bought a property here, like up north or wherever. They bought a couple, and it's kind of spiraled from there. So I think if you're someone that you're listening, like, having a business is not really for me. That's not something I'm interested in. You don't have to have a business per se. I think the key thing is being an investor in some capacity. Yeah. Whether that's going to be investing in property, the stock market, a mixture of things, investing in other people's businesses, legit ones, of course. But I think it's just having an investor mentality. It's not necessarily, being an entrepreneur is not for everyone. It isn't, and that's the reality. And also, it's not an easy life. It's not.
So true.
It's not.
I love the fact that you said that, because I think sometimes it's often quite glamorized as well.
It definitely is.
To be like, oh, this is the ultimate. And don't get me wrong, I think, again, this is my view anyway, my personal view. It's very good to diversify, right? I think that's even in the Bible as well, like to diversify your earnings or whatever have you. So sometimes for some people it might be that's their form of diversification, that they also have their own business and they have a corporate thing, or they have multiple businesses, and that all comes together to form their income. What's my point even? But
the importance of diversifying.
The importance of diversifying. But I think entrepreneurship can be like, oh my gosh, that is the ultimate. You have, if you're not being an entrepreneur, you're a slave to a system. And I think the reality is you're only a slave if you just sit there and you kind of just conform and you don't ask questions.
And if you're not being intentional with your money.
Yeah.
Because for some people, they may look at me like, oh, you're a slave to your job. But if you're being strategic with your money, you're not. It's serving a purpose. It's helping you to pay your bills and to invest in the things that you want to be doing. Yeah. So I think it's not necessarily what you're doing, but how you're using that money.
Yeah.
Again, going back to the multiplying your money, it's the same thing. It might not be in the form of having your own business, but it might be investing in other businesses. Yeah. So maybe you realize, that's not for me, but I will happily invest in something that aligns with my attitude to risk. So I think that's the key thing. Being an investor, becoming an investor, that's the important part, as opposed to just being an entrepreneur. That part is not for everyone.
Love that. Thank you so much for coming today. I really, really appreciate it. I think you've given us so many gems. Like, as you're sitting here, I'm just reflecting like, oh my gosh, I better start that thing. Or I better do that thing that I've been saying I've been doing for so long. I think we all have, I think you rightfully said, we all have our own backgrounds or the ways that we've seen money being handled. And I think having people like you is, even in the social media space, is so important, because we can then gauge advice for how it's done or how it is done differently. And I think that's what opens people's eyes, because unless, if you grew up with your mum, your dad saving a certain way, the likelihood of you also doing that is very high, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So when we have people like yourself, of course, that makes... that allows people to have options, and that opens their eyes, right, and just allows them to have a bit more potential for those who, for example, their parents probably didn't use money as well, or they got money and they kind of didn't manage it as well. So no, it's really, really appreciate you having you on this show today. Thank you so much. There's so many gems. I just have to watch this again myself, actually, to make sure I write down every single one. But there's so many gems, and I like the fact that you spoke so much about a mindset and that how you should look and think about money, and that's kind of how you start. So again, I'm going to thank you one more time. Thank you for coming. And if you would like to say, I don't know, any last words, or promote your Instagram and other things, then please go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, firstly, thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed this conversation. As far as anyone listening that you want to connect with me, I'd definitely say follow me on social media. So my TikTok, all my handles are the same, Your Finance PT. But also have a look at my website, pearlsandperils.com, where you can kind of see a little bit more about my sessions and what I do. And if you've got a question, slide into my DMs, or drop me an email. Yeah, I want to connect with you. That's what I'd say.
That's amazing. Actually, just before we go, and it was a question I was going to ask before, but I just reminded me. Your coaching business name, where did you get that from?
So, also something I forgot to say, I do have a podcast as well, the Pearls and Perils podcast.
Amazing.
I'll send you the link for that.
Okay, please do.
So the coaching aspect, the name came from the podcast.
Okay.
Because again, it's like I'm giving you the pearls and the perils.
Yes.
So you're getting the valuable gems, but also you're also being able to navigate through your challenges as well. So yeah, that's kind of where the name came from.
That's
just
amazing.
Kind of keeping that all under the same umbrella.
That is amazing. So guys, you've heard it from Peta-Kay first here, that she also has her own podcast show, so I'm going to link that as well. Please have a look and find out more about finance. Yeah, we're here to definitely not just inspire but really share information. I think we're in an age where we should share as much information as possible, right? Because why not? Yeah. I think the whole point is to basically in what's the word, enlighten ourselves and just make sure that everyone has the best go at basically being the best version of themselves. And if there's information that someone can use to get there, then let it be available to them. Whether they take it or not is
up to them.
It's up to them. Exactly. So thank you so much. And I think we're going to wrap up the show right now. But until next time, guys, we'll see you again with our next guest. So see ya. Take care. Bye.